What a day. Great day for a show, right?
No kidding, right? So, people in chat are telling me that you did a great warm up for us.
I hope so. I was just kind of, there's a lot to say about it. There really is. I'm sure we'll get into it, but yeah, I tried. I mean, it is my issue that I talk about. It's the only issue I care about is corruption. And, we could talk, depending on how you want the show to go. I know both me and you do things outside of Twitch and outside of our channels. You have a radio show. I know you're involved with local politics. I am too. And, when I talk to Republicans, it's always, oh, Rob, you're too extreme. When I'm like, disband the FBI. It's all corrupt. Oh, that's too much. That's too much. So thank goodness we nominated Dr. Oz. There's a man that'll go after the corruption. It's just, but I'm on a thread right now with a bunch of county commissioners, and they're like, my goodness, I can't believe this happened. And I'm just like, yeah, I told you.
The Trump news you're saying?
Well, yeah, well, these county commissioners in Pennsylvania here, Republican like county commissioners and people in the Republican, the county level Republicans, and I'm on a big thread with a bunch of them on my phone, and they're just like, I can't believe this is happening. Yeah, the Trump. Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, and I'm just telling them like, I told you this would happen. If
Right.
Trump outed the corruption, not because he's a genius, because he was a potential outsider, but he didn't do anything about it. And I said, all that will do is embolden them. The next time they're going to be like, we don't even have to hide behind the facade of, well, we got a FISA warrant. They'll just be like, yeah, we're raiding your home. And that's exactly what happened. They don't care, you know?
Right. Totally unbelievable. All right, 6:30 p.m. Let's get this show started. Welcome everybody. This is the lecture fan and Rob Noerr State of the 2022 midterm campaign 10-part series. We've had to compress a couple of one part or two parts into one part, but otherwise we've done it. I can't believe it's already August. This would be our end of July show. This is technically part 7. So we may have to do another one here in 3 weeks if we actually want to do 10 of these before the midterm elections. But we've only got 3 months out on the midterms, and we've been doing this since I think February was the first one we did 6 months ago.
Yep.
Lots have changed over the last 6 months. Tons and tons of stuff has changed. But yeah, thanks for everybody for stopping in. So let's get it going. Rob, what's your? I mean, we might as well start with this breaking news because this is obviously going to impact. Well, maybe not obviously. I mean, is it going to impact the election? I mean, the news is the FBI agents searched former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home on Monday, which people familiar with the matter said was part of an investigation into his handling of official records. This reminds me, frankly, of the. Didn't they just indict Peter Navarro for using a personal email for official business? And everybody that saw that was like, wait, hold on. That's what Hillary Clinton did, and nothing happened to her. What is going on here?
Yeah, and people forget. It's just amazing. And I mean, we know this. They don't care about the double standard. The establishment and the left, they don't care. It's all about power for them. They'll pretend to care about kids in cages when Trump's in office, and then when it's 4 times worse under them, they're like, "What kids in cages? It's not a problem." So this is just an extension of that. But it is amusing. I keep hearing this vague story, for example, about Secret Service agents and people at Homeland Security that deleted their phones on January 6th. It's like, well, I remember when the FBI deleted Strzok and Lisa Page's phone, and then Mueller's team deleted their phones, and Hillary's team deleted subpoenaed evidence. I remember all of that, and that was the Democrats said that's all legitimate. That's perfectly fine. And the case of Hillary Clinton, she deleted subpoenaed evidence. So
Right.
Congress subpoenaed. Remember, this is why Steve Bannon was held in contempt. Now he just said, well, what's the word I'm looking for? Executive privilege, right? That me and the president's conversations are privileged, so I don't have to release it. I said, why even bother doing that? Why isn't everyone who's subpoenaed from here on out just say, oh, I'm sorry, I wiped it like with a cloth. That's what I did. My bad. Right? That's what you're allowed to do now, right? And so I'm not
Right.
surprised this raid occurred. He's being accused of what we know Hillary did. He's being publicly raided. The FBI is just the Gestapo of the Democratic Party and the establishment. That's what they are. They will drag this out until the midterms. They will probably indict Trump a week or two outside of the midterms. Now, remember, this is all occurring as we were told repeatedly by the people in the Justice Department when Trump was in office, like Bill Barr and people like that. Well, we couldn't announce the investigations we had before the election, into corruption or malfeasance by the FBI because we were afraid that it would influence the election. One thing you got to
Right.
tip your cap to the Democrats. They don't care. Like, they don't care what the optics are. They have power. They'll use it. It must be nice to be a Democrat today. And, what I recommend is everybody look at all your favorite Twitch streamers on the left. Look at your favorite left wing, CNN host or New York Times writers. They're all going to be cheering right now. They don't know why the president was raided. They don't. They don't know anything about it. And yet they're all for it. They're all celebrating like this is some sort of victory. So remember that. They're showing you who they are. They want Trump in jail, not because he's Trump, but because he criticized them, just like they would cheer if any of us got raided by the FBI and went to jail. They would cheer for that as well. That's who they are.
100%. And why would the Democrats have any gumption about doing any of this stuff when we knew going into the 2020 election, we knew of significant amounts of corruption that had occurred with the whole Trump-Russia scam and all of the wrongdoing that occurred there amongst Democrats and Hillary Clinton and the FBI and the DOJ and you name it, and Congress and Adam Schiff and all the different hoaxes and dishonesty and all this stuff and out corruption. And they used the intelligence agencies to spy on a political opponent, and that was known, evident, that was publicly known, irrefutable, going into 2020. And I said prior to 2020, the big thing that's going to come from 2020 is this election will show whether or not the American people are accepting of the Democrats' corruption and the double standard and you name it. Now, setting aside for a second, what really happened, who really won 2020 or any of that stuff, the fact of the matter is the Democrats think they won and they think the American people are totally fine with it. And the fact remains too that there were tens of millions of Americans that voted for Democrats in 2020, even knowing that there was this corruption out there. And so, you think about this story about raiding Trump, and it's like, on one hand, I'm just like, does it affect the elections? Does it have any impact on the elections? Because we already know that this corruption exists. We already know that there's a massive double standard. We already know that they're using and abusing the powers of the government, and we know that they'll use the IRS to go after political opponents, and we know all of this stuff, and there are still tens of millions of Americans that still vote for Democrats. If anything, this type of a news, I think, maybe it inspires the Republican base a little bit more, because this basically proves what we've been saying, right? That's the ironic part about this, right? Is this breaking news, this basically proves that we've all been right for a long time about the double standard, about the corruption, about them going after Trump, about all this stuff. So maybe it helps Republicans, if anything.
Well, for me, I think it would have helped primaries more, which
Right.
ironically are done. It's funny that this
Right.
happened
Yeah.
after the primaries.
Good
Isn't
point.
that interesting?
Right.
Like, how do you think Carrie Lake would have benefited? Because I think there are
Right.
there are moderate Republicans that are like, yeah, there was some crazy stuff with the FBI, but I'm more concerned about tax policy, or I'm more concerned about, immigration and stuff like that, which is fine. Those are important issues. But I think I think a lot of them will wake up because of this. But I don't know that it affects the general whatsoever for the reasons you said. The Democrats are absolutely fine with that's locked in. And then the people that might be worried, I've spent years talking about corruption as my main issue. And I think I do it quite articulately. And there are definitely an audience of people that are infuriated and they understand the corruption. And some of them are even on the left. You can see like Glenn Greenwald and people like that. They didn't like Trump, but they'll be out there saying this is outrageous. And they thought the Russiagate coup was an outrage too. But the problem is, what's still going to be the issue going into the midterms? You can't put gas in your car. You can't feed your family. You can't pay your mortgage. It's hard for people to wrap their head around corruption. And make no mistake, the reason that the Democrats are able to get away with this corruption is because they control the narrative so well. And so they'll have all of their media and all of these people that inundate our culture will be out there saying, no, this is great. Trump's evil. He's corrupt. He needs to go to prison the rest of his life. He's the worst. He's the worst. And when you talk to like my neighbors that are farmers, they're going to be like, I don't know nothing about that. If Trump committed some kind of crime, fine, whatever. But what are we going to do about my gas prices? And so I don't know how much this tilts the scale. I know that the January 6th show trial, it didn't help them. When they polled after that show trial, it didn't tilt the scale at all for the Democrats. At all.
Well,
Maybe
yeah.
abortion will tilt the scale, but it wasn't that. So I don't think it'll have much of an effect,
No,
sadly.
I hear you. No, what you were just saying just made me think though, like what they say that Trump did here, handling of official records. It's one of these types of things that nobody cares about. If you tell someone, oh my gosh, he mishandled official records. Whoa, he mishandled. What kind of an impact does that have on anybody's life? If somebody mishandled official records, number one, nobody gives a crap about anybody mishandling official records. That's so nobody even you don't even know what that means. It's a meaningless phrase, and so it's not something that's going to get people fired up or really interested in. People are just going to their eyes glaze over when you tell somebody, oh, he mishandled official records. They just tune out. They get bored. Their eyes glaze over. No, but nobody cares. But that's probably on purpose too. And that's the other thing about this that just shows that it's corrupt and shows that it proves that everything that we've been saying is right and that they're doing this for nefarious reasons and ulterior motives and you name it. Is if they don't actually have anything that he did. They actually can't point to anything that says, here's the smoking gun. Trump committed a crime. It's this BS sort of esoteric like mishandling of official records that's completely meaningless. And so yeah, I mean I just don't see very many people caring about this other than the people that are already tuned into the shenanigans of the Democrats. I think you're right that it's still going to come down to the economy. And of course, the Democrats just hammered through another $750 billion blowout spending package and tax hikes and more IRS agents, which they will use to then go after their political enemies. I mean, this is just a bad, bad, bad week.
Yeah, just 2 points here, real quick. Yeah, your point on the mishandling. Remember, we know for a fact James Comey mishandled classified information. He was recommended to be charged by the IG. He did not return all of the material he was supposed to, and instead leaked it to a friend of his who leaked it to the press. That was mishandling of classified misinformation. We know Hillary did with her server. Also, from the get-go, this is what I've said. If Trump committed crimes, charge him. I don't have a problem. I don't have a personal stake. I don't know Donald Trump. He doesn't give me money, right? Like, he's a person. The movement is not just about Donald Trump. They're going after Trump because of the movement, not because of him as the individual. They don't want populist conservatives that care about values to make this country stronger and they're tired of this corruption. They don't want them having a voice. That's what this is about. But the thing that infuriates me is, okay, if we're now going to send the FBI to raid people's homes that mishandled classified information, why aren't we doing it to all the Democrats and the FBI people that we know did just that? If they would go back and say, oh, and by the way, we're raiding James Comey's house and we're raiding Hillary Clinton's house, right? Fine. The same with Veritas. You want to raid Project Veritas because allegedly they got information they shouldn't have had? Then why aren't you raiding Rachel Maddow when she got Trump's tax returns? If you want to do both of them, no problem. I don't have a problem. What I have a problem with is in every single case, it's a two-tier justice system. So I don't know how much that will weigh, but that's what I'm thinking. The other thing, what you just said, though, I think is equally as interesting. This massive Green New Deal that they just put. Notice they stopped calling it in the media already the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, now it's a climate. Now it's a climate.
Historic climate. Yeah, historic climate legislation. All just like that, right? I read this interesting quote, or I saw this interesting quote from Milton Friedman. It was just like 30 seconds. I wish I had it with me now. And he said, inflation's a lot like alcoholism. And in both, like with being an alcoholic or inflation, at first it's good. It feels good. Oh, you print a bunch of money. There's good stuff that comes. Alcohol, you're getting drunk. It's good. You don't see the negative effects until later. But when you're trying to get off it, it's the exact opposite. At first it feels bad. Like you go through alcohol withdrawal with inflation. Well, now we've spent more than we have. We have to start tightening programs. We have to, right? And so I think that that's an apt metaphor. And sadly, are the American people going to see the effects of this inflation-causing bill? Are they going to see? They're not going to get audited until after the midterms, right? So what's going to happen is they're going to be sold this bill of goods that's like, we capped insulin prices, and this is all good. We're just going after billionaires, and it's all good, and these programs are going to be great. And then people will say, if anything, it'll help Democrats because it gets to change the narrative from how bad they were doing. So people might be hopefully, oh, the Inflation Reduction Act passed? Great, that'll help me with inflation. And they won't see until after the midterms. So I don't know. I don't think that's going to have a big effect on the midterm either.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I've got some more thoughts on that. But what you were just saying kind of really, I think, gets to the root of the problem that we have as conservatives, and particularly that Milton Friedman quote. And I've talked about this before and always thought of it like this way. Number one, it's very difficult for conservatives to sell our policy prescriptions because oftentimes they do involve short-term pain. So for example, if we were going to balance the federal budget, let's say we're going to balance the federal budget, okay? That's going to cause some short-term pain. All of the people that are dependent on federal government handouts, all of the businesses that are surviving on federal government contracts, it's going to be painful, very painful. I mean, think about it. What if we started to phase out Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid and send those programs back to the states? In the long run, that's better for everybody. It's better for the country. But in the short term, the political arguments you can make about grandma's going to die and all these Americans are going to die and stuff. So it's like, how do you ever? So that's why, I mean, really to have a function, kind of goes back to the whole idea of like, to have a functioning republic, constitutional republic, you have to have citizens who are engaged and informed, because otherwise you're going to get what we have now, which is people are not that informed and they're just going to go for the knee-jerk sort of whatever feels good reaction, the easy way out. Yeah, let's just print money. Yeah, let's just keep doing all this government spending. Nobody's going to go and do a deep analysis that leads them to the conclusion that, hey, we've got to stop the spending binge, and yeah, it's going to cause some pain in the short term for some people. But how many people are going to go get elected in 2022 offering to inflict pain on the voters when they can be sold a bill of goods about just unlimited money printing and modern monetary theory and blah 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 blah? So I don't know how the only solution to that is that the American people have to become informed enough to then and become mature enough politically to stop just voting for the easy way out and the short-term gains, and without thinking of sort of the long-term solution. I mean, and that only is going to happen if people have a sufficient reason to do it, and people only are going to have a sufficient reason to do it if we're experiencing significant economic pain, and that's only going to happen when it's too late. So it's really it leads you to kind of a pessimistic place.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I think you're absolutely right about that. It's going to require people to be more informed and people to kind of. But here's the problem, right? Professor Robert Epstein testified in front of the Senate in 2019 or early 2020 that he estimated that Google and the company that owns Alphabet would be able to swing up to 19 million votes in the 2020 election. Because the way we get information now as people is so much through online, through social media, through algorithms on places like Google and other search engines like that. And so if those algorithms, and if it was being manipulated in a certain way to only push one viewpoint or to push positive one viewpoint and negative the other, it would have a significant effect. And that gets to what you're talking about. I think that you're right, and I think that the establishment knows it. The Democrats know that. That's why they're pushing the Ministry of Information, Ministry of Truth Disinformation Board. That's why they're trying to do everything they can to shame and discredit certain topics. That's why you couldn't question COVID. That's why you couldn't question the election, right? They just make it verboten. You can't question those things. And it's bad already, but it's a trial run, right? You can't question Ukraine. And it's eventually going to get. You can't question Big Brother. You can't question anything they say, or you'll be removed from these platforms, and they'll say, well, go create another platform. What, like Parler tried to do? And they basically disbanded it as well. And so I think that you're right that we need to wake people up, but it'll be too late. There's this study that I saw they did, and they took 10 people. 9 of them were like controls. They're part of the study, but the 10th person was the one they were researching. And what they did was show them lengths of line, right? A and B. And one line was longer than the other. And you had to raise your hand, left hand for A and right hand for B. Which line was longer? And at first, everyone does the right thing. But then they instruct all 9 of the plants to start telling the opposite of the truth. And almost every single person, it only took 1 or 2 times, and they just went along. They knew it was a lie. And that's the manipulation and the power. If you control the narrative so successfully, people could, like... they're attempting, and I'm not black-pilled. I think people have the ability to wake up, and we're doing good in a lot of ways. But look at what they're trying to do. They're not saying, look, there are a lot of significant problems with the economy. Maybe we made some mistakes. We think going forward we could adjust some things, but people have the right to be upset. We still feel we're the best people going forward. The Republican ideas aren't good. They're not saying that. They're saying best economy ever. Best economy you've ever seen. That's what they're saying. And you just have to, like, it's so Orwellian. It's like, my goodness, they just, the way they're and like you said, I don't care. Our audience could sit here and say, well, we think the election was rigged. Maybe. I think there is significant evidence that needs to be investigated. But even if it was, tens of millions of people voted for the Democrats. And they don't care. They are all in. They are all in. They think that if you didn't get the proper medication, that you shouldn't be allowed to be in public. They think it's funny if you die if you didn't get it. They think that you should be locked up if you go to protest and don't engage in violence, protest against it. That's how they think. And they will be willing to, like, I'm telling you, you haven't seen the depths that they'll be willing to go. If they started putting Trump's supporters in re-education camps, they would be celebrating. And so how do you overcome that insanity? It's
no, I mean,
scary.
didn't they did a poll recently that kind of went viral, if I recall correctly, where they basically asked Democrats, like, should people that didn't get the vaccine even be allowed to have health care? And like some huge number of them were like, yep, nope, they shouldn't even be allowed to get health care.
60%.
Yeah, 60%.
And that same poll same poll said 29% said you shouldn't be allowed to have a kid in your home.
Right.
I mean,
this is like Nazi. I mean, that's
Nazism.
I mean, that's, you like actually compare it to actual fascism. These are fascists. But I mean, I'm convinced though, and maybe this is sort of wrong, but I'm convinced there's got to be 20%, 30% of Democrats or people that have voted Democrats that are good people that are just, they're confused. They think the Democrats are still the old party of the old Democrat. Now, I think a lot of Hispanics and African Americans make up a chunk of that group that are open-minded enough to actually change their mind and start voting Republican. But it feels horrible. The other thing you said, they said, you know how they're saying that this is the best economy ever? It's the same claim that they made about 2020 election being the most secure election ever. And it's like, hold on. If you want to tell me that we had some insecure procedures in 2020, we had some processes and some rules in place that were not the best in terms of security, but we still think it was, for the most part, it was a secure election and everything. That's one thing. But to go out and say it's the most secure of all time, that automatically makes me not trust them and makes me not trust what they're saying. To make such an outlandish claim, and then you're right, they shut down free speech, and they call anybody that disagrees all these names so that they get people to, because I think I think where you're going with that is that, like, if there was a genuine marketplace of ideas and there was genuine free speech and the American people were allowed to see the full facts and the full information and to hear everybody's opinion, then the conservatives, we would win. But the Democrats know that, so then they have to shut everybody down and they have to, censor everybody and do everything like that. So, I mean, I used to think that, okay, once things start to get bad enough economically, then people will wake up, for lack of a better term. But then you look at what's going on in Europe, and Europe is experiencing extreme economic hardships. I mean, those people, they don't even have air conditioning. Their electricity costs are through the roof. In the wintertime, in a lot of places in Europe, they actually are living in their houses in the wintertime, wearing hats and gloves, winter coats inside their houses. They're wearing winter coats and hats and gloves inside their houses throughout the winter, because natural gas prices are so high and they don't want to pay money to go to Russia. So they literally will keep their house at like 50, 55 degrees in the winter and wear hats and gloves. And I'm just like, but they won't stop voting for green politicians, and they won't stop voting for the climate alarmism politicians. And I'm just like, okay, so maybe my theory's wrong here, that once it gets bad enough, people will suddenly realize. It's like, no, people just continue to accept this. So
I used to
I don't
say
know.
this. I used to say, I was like, part of me was like, let's just give them everything they want for 4 years. Defund the police, like all this Green New Deal stuff, give it. And then when 4 years comes and it's a disaster and homicides are through the roof, homeless people everywhere, people's savings wiped out, then they'll realize. But now I realize they won't. And it's because they control the narrative so effectively. We could, in this country, have Democrats win every national seat for the next 40 years. Every single one. 100 senators to 0, right? And 40 years from now, when things were bad, they'd be like, those damn Trump supporters. It's their fault. That's what you can see it. They do it in places like Minneapolis. They're like, oh, this city's terrible. Philadelphia, it's terrible. It's like been ran exclusively by Democrats for how many years? And they're like, but it's Republicans' fault. It's conservatives' fault. That's who's to blame. So there is no getting through until we shift culturally. That's why I think politics is downstream of culture. And to your point, I don't think that it's the overwhelming majority of Democrats that are terrible, bad people. It's probably close to 15 to 20% that are just despicable, terrible people. The problem is the others go along with it because they truly believe what they're being told. They believe Trump said Nazis were good people. They believe that Trump supporters are white supremacists. They believe when Republicans didn't vote for the PACT Act, it was because they saw it as opening up $400 billion of spending in other ways. They believe that. They don't believe that. They just believe, Republicans hated veterans. That's what they believe. And it's easy to see. What the Democrats are going to do, and it's going to be very effective, they're going to say, Republicans voted against capping insulin. Now, this ignores two things, right? One, Joe Biden rescinded a cap on insulin prices as soon as he came into office, and all of them were cool with it. They were all cool with it, right? So that's number one. And number two, Grassley put forth an amendment that would have similarly capped, maybe not as much, but would have capped similarly, and all Democrats, all 50 of them, voted against it. So what they're saying, why wouldn't it be, think about this. This is how we should explain this. It would be like they'll say, well, that was only 80% of what the Democrats wanted. Okay, but why not vote for 80%? If it's 80% or nothing, why not vote for 80%? And the reason is because they don't care about insulin prices. They care about using it as a political issue. But it works because the average person just sees, it wasn't that Republicans were concerned about, sunshining this in and, messing with market economies and the slippery slope that comes with capping prices on stuff. It couldn't have been that. It's just they hate people that want insulin. That's what it is. And the black community used to get that. It's not that Republicans have differing opinions on things. It's that they hate black people. And it's effective. I hope that it's not going to be effective, that it's starting to change. But who knows?
The reality, of course, is that central government planning economic planning doesn't work. Government price controls don't work. This idea that let's just have government price controls. Let's just have the government control prices, and we'll have government control prices for rent. We'll have government control prices for insulin. It's bad policy. It doesn't work. The reality, of course, is that over-regulation by the federal government of the healthcare industry and the healthcare sector and various other factors, basically government involvement is why insulin prices continue to go high, and it's why our entire healthcare. So the real solution, of course, is less government involvement. It's
more
not,
competition.
It's not like it's not having Trump's executive order cap it or having Grassley's amendment. But again, it goes back to our original issue, like explaining to people that, hey, communism doesn't work. Central planning doesn't work. Government price controls, that doesn't work. That's a complex policy argument that requires thinking multiple steps down the line, where it's government can cap the price. Oh, cool. That's just like a knee-jerk, emotionally feel-good argument. But I mean, it kind of, if you were listening to us for the last half hour, you might think that, we think it's all doom and gloom here and that Republicans can never win and we just constantly getting wiped out. And so I guess let's kind of go back to where the original sort of purpose of this, and I guess your take on, let's talk about the House first. I think historically you've been of the opinion for the past 6 months that Republicans are in good shape to retake the House. I think we got a prediction out of you last time. Do you still think the Republicans are going to do well in the House?
Yeah, I still do. I still think that Republicans will win in the House. I think it'll be a pretty convincing win. I think the Democrats have made some ground. This bill is good for Democrats because the negatives won't be seen until later, and more importantly, it distracts from all the other stupid stuff that they're doing, right? So now this will be the talking point. And rightfully so, Republicans will be like, this is terrible, it's a disaster. But now we're not talking about the border crisis. Now we're not talking about the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. And so I do think this helps somewhat, but I don't think it'll be enough. I think, like I said, that the big issues are still going to be the economy, inflation, and Biden and them think that they're making ground saying, like, we did a great job. Gas has been lowered 60 cents. It's like, right, you tripled it and then
Right.
brought it down 10%. And like,
Yeah,
Americans aren't that dumb.
I love your explanation of that on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah, it's like my landlord, he triples my rent. I go from 1,000 a month to 3,000 a month, and then he comes to me next month and goes, "You know what? We're gonna give you a break of $100. It's only 2,900. Please put my thank you card in the mail." I did it, buddy. I did it for you. It's like, what a joke. It's just
Right.
it's. So I think that even in the Senate, I still expect the Republicans to win both. And let me be before we get into specific predictions, let me be quite clear. The silver lining with Trump being raided today and with this bill being shoved through is maybe the Republicans will grow a spine if they win, and they'll start going after corruption, and they'll start pushing bills that are good for their constituents without worrying about norms and the need for bipartisanship. War has
Right.
basically been declared. There is no compromise with this party, and so start governing as such. So if you win the
Yeah.
election, hopefully this will spur them on to do
Yeah.
better policies instead of the normal, oh, we're trying to be bipartisan.
I mean, honestly, I would like to look some Democrats in the eye and go through sort of what's happened historically with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Department of Justice, and look some of these Democrats in the eye and be like, do you really think that the only people that deserve to be investigated are Republicans? That the only people that have ever done anything wrong in Washington, D.C. are Republicans? Because that's the system we have right now. Is it's only Republicans who are being investigated and having their houses raided and everything like this. And it's like, I can understand you if you think that both sides are corrupt. If you think both parties are corrupt and you think that both sides are doing wrongdoing, then I can understand you and we can have a conversation. But nobody honestly believes that. Any Democrat, if you look him in the eye, is going to admit, no, it's not only well, then why is it only the Republicans that are ever getting raided and being investigated? It's just it's so I certainly hope you're right that the Republicans grow a spine. One thing that I thought was bad news was the Kansas that happened in the last 30 days was the Kansas abortion vote. Frankly, I didn't even know that was like a big thing happening in Kansas. I lived in Kansas for 3 or 4 years, in Wichita, and I didn't even know about it, even though I've got friends that still live there and stuff. But then come to find out, it's this huge deal, and it's this blah 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 blah. And I've got 3 or 4 reasons why I don't think it's the most important outcome, and a couple thoughts on what it kind of says and what the Democrats are going to do with it. But I'll get your take on kind of what happened there, and then what do you think that says for the midterms?
I think that it look, abortion was always for the same reasons that the Green New Deal that just got passed is going to help the Democrats. Roe v. Wade was going to help in this sense. If you remember, I think I said it on our show that it's sort of like a Hail Mary. It's not guaranteed to help the Democrats, but when you're losing so bad, you need to change the conversation. This is at least a change. I think they overestimated, but it was a potential to change. And I think what Kansas represents is two things. One, the bill was worded insanely. Like I don't. If I went in there, I
Made
would
no
have to
sense,
like
yeah.
look at that for 15 minutes and be like, so wait, I want less abortions. What do I pick on this? Like it was, so that was part of the problem. But I think that the messaging was better by the Democrats, and Republicans need to get better on this messaging, right? Where the Democrats, they have the huge advantage. They have the establishment, they have the media, they have the entertainment industry. What Republicans need to do is get out there and be like, what we're talking about doing is stopping bills like in New York where they allow 9-month abortions. And listen, I don't like talking about abortion. It is sad. It is one of the saddest things in our society. But we need to start being like, this is what this procedure is. Look at what you're doing, right? And look, I'm not for a complete elimination. I do think that it should be left up to the states. I really do. So I don't, unless there's a federal amendment or not even amendment, a federal law passed. I do think it should be up to the states. That's what our Constitution says. But we need to go on the offense, showing like, look at how grotesque these later term abortions. They are not moderate. It is no longer safe, legal, and rare. This is the party that says woman's body, woman's choice, no matter what. And if that means 8 or 9 month abortion, so be it. And I think the Democrats are able to play that game the opposite way much better, where they're out there saying, well, this 10-year-old got raped and you wanted her to have to carry it to term, right? And I think that messaging's winning. So the Republicans need to get smarter on the messaging, showing that the real grotesque people and the real extreme people are the Democrats on this. But I still don't think it's going to have a big,
Well, so yeah, I mean, I'll just talk a little bit in response to that. I think you're absolutely right. There was it's just so weird that Kansas, of all places, in the Bible Belt, one of the most conservative places, like Democrats are going to completely misinterpret this. Democrats are going to interpret this as being, oh my gosh, look at this. Even Republicans now support abortion, and we have to make this the number one issue, and we have to talk about abortion, and we got to really run with this. And the reality, of course, is that vote doesn't mean that at all. There was a number of factors that led to it, I think, and you're right. Number one, the wording was awful. It made no sense. Nobody could understand it. Number two, the pro-abortion industry, the abortion industry itself is a multi-billion-dollar industry that poured millions and millions of dollars into that campaign, and the pro-life side really didn't have any. And then there's also this theory about abortion reform that conservatives have been successful in abortion reform by doing incremental changes to abortion law. And this was viewed as basically improperly in my mind, but viewed as a total ban with no exceptions, even no exceptions for the life of the mother. And so that was part of the problem with this, is they could caricature this bill as being something it's not. And so then it became this issue of, okay, do you want no abortion, never, with no exceptions, no exception for the life of the mother, or not? Well, and if that's the vote, like, even a lot of pro-life people are going to vote against that, because even pro-life people believe that the life of the mother should be an exception, because that's then the mother's life is alive. When the reality is of course, is that you're right. They're the other side's the extreme side, somehow the side that's the extreme side was able to paint the pro-lifers as the extremists, when the reality is of course is the exact opposite. So there's just a number of sort of weird things that sort of happened with that, and it was this August primary where they already had a 22-week abortion ban in Kansas, so this was viewed as, rightly or wrongly viewed as, being a total ban with no exceptions. And you're just and the polling, as far as I know, the polling shows that most Americans, they don't support late-term abortions. They don't support second trimester abortions, but they do believe that there should be exceptions for certainly the life of the mother. And so you're just going to lose those even in Kansas. But the Democrats, I think it's going to hurt the Democrats, because the Democrats are going to take this and view this as, look, even conservative Republicans support abortion. Let's go make this thing about abortion. And so now between now and election day in November, which is legitimately 3 months out, we're only 3 months out. It's incredible how close we are. They're going to obsess about climate change and global warming and then abortion. And all of the Americans are going to be like, hold on, no, we don't care about global warming and abortion right now. We care about the economy and inflation and gas prices. So I'm hoping, and I think it will, is that this will cause the Democrats to sort of lose focus on these issues and continue to focus on abortion when really that's not the message that should be taken from Kansas.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought of it that, and that's very smart. And I will say, in my state of Pennsylvania, the current attack ad against Dr. Oz is just a clip of Dr. Oz saying, I'm absolutely pro-life. Dr. Oz wants to end your right to abort. That's the ad. That's what they're doing here in Pennsylvania right now. So I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. They overplay their hand as a result of this. It's, again, I understand the majority, regardless of what our feelings on abortion. I think you're absolutely right. Most Americans want some form of early trimester abortion to be legal, but they want it to be rare and something that's like done because there's basically no other good options. And certainly they want the exceptions that you talked about for the mother's life and things like that. And I think that at the end of the day, if we're on an even playing field narrative wise, the Republican Party is far closer to that message than the Democrat Party, because
Oh,
even
the
if the
Democrats are
Republican Party
insane.
goes right, if the Republicans go a little too far for the average person on the restriction end of it, the Democrats go way too far on the, well, we want to celebrate it. We want 8-month abortions. We want 9-month abortions. And
Right.
so I definitely think that that's an issue that favors us. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is going on in the Oz race right now? What's the latest on that?
So
Are you?
polling shows. So the two big races in Pennsylvania is the governor race, where Mastriano, who I liked, was the primary winner, and the Senate race, which is Dr. Oz. Mastriano is polling basically, the last I saw it, within the margin of error against Josh Shapiro for the governor seat, and Warnock, or I'm sorry, Warnock. Oz is lagging behind John Fetterman. It's a really weird election right now, though, because Fetterman had a big health scare. He had a stroke right before the primary, and they still voted for him. And he's basically not been public. He's doing everything from like his basement, like Joe Biden style, where they're just putting out memes and stuff. And I don't know how effective that will be with voters. It's certainly effective in Twitter, right? All the Twitter lefties think it's hilarious and think it's great. Now, actually, I got to admit, some of the stuff Fetterman put out about Oz is kind of funny, but they didn't make me vote for him.
Are
It's
you
like
talking
maybe if
about
I
the
was
stuff that where like Oz goes to like some like restaurant or something and Fetterman tweets out like, "Oh, that's a great tourist place where tourists like to go" or something like
right.
that?
They got like paying like Snooki to be like, "Hey, you're a great New Jersey citizen. Why don't we come
Yeah.
back to Jersey here?" It's kind of funny. It is, and it is an argument. Like it. Listen, Republicans nominated this guy. It's true. They're gonna have to beat back these carpetbagger allegations. But we'll see. I think that right now the Republicans have a far better chance to win that governor seat in Pennsylvania than the Senate seat. But it sounds weird saying this, but it's early. It's very early, and I think Dr. Oz. I got to meet him. I talked to him here. I told him I didn't like him,
Did
which
you?
is always good when you meet. Yeah. I told him I didn't vote for him, and I was skeptical that he wouldn't be a rhino. But I would be supporting him going into the general election, and that I couldn't wait for him to prove me wrong. That's what I told him, and I was like, and he said, "I understand." So I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but I think that Dr. Oz, quite simply, my message is the same to him as it is to every single Republican running. You need to make this about you running against Joe Biden. No one likes the guy. He's terrible. His decisions have led this country in a very poor and dark place. That's what the election needs to be. And John Fetterman, who he's running against, is an extreme lefty, Joe Biden-esque type person, more of a Bernie type person, to be honest. And that's what Dr. Oz hopefully crosses the finish line doing. And if he does that, I think that he'll fare very well.
Good, good. So the other one that's been getting a lot of news, and I guess I can't tell if this is real or not though. The Georgia race. I always thought that was going to be a slam dunk easy win over Warnock because Warnock is one of these radical extremist leftists, but I keep seeing this stuff and it's like Republicans are worried about Georgia and Herschel Walker can't hang and doesn't want to debate with Warnock and blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm choosing to believe that that's not a real story and that's not really what's going on and that Herschel Walker is still going to pull this thing out. But I mean, you pull up Real Clear Politics polling on the Pennsylvania Senate race, and Fetterman's up by like 10 points. And you've pulled
Yep.
the one up in Georgia, and Warnock is up like 4.5 points. So it's like,
Yep.
I mean, is Warnock or is Herschel Walker really doing better than Oz is? Because to me, from the
I
outside,
don't. Yeah.
it's hard to say. I don't know.
I think that there is like it's weird. I think I talked to you about this. Like it's weird because Dr. Oz, even though he was endorsed by Trump, I think he's seen as more of an establishment type Republican, but Mastriano is the exact opposite. Mastriano is considered a populist. I think that kind of weirdly helps both of them. Right? Because you're not going to go to the polls as an establishment Republican, probably, with very few exceptions, and be like, I'm going to vote for Josh Shapiro for governor, though. And you're not going to go as a populist like me and be like, yeah, I like Mastriano and I'm not a big Oz fan, but say, you know what, I'll vote for John Fetterman. It's not going to happen. So
Right.
it's about enthusiasm, bringing people out. And so I think both of those groups are enthusiastic. You know, I I got to be honest. I think that there's utility at looking at polls, but they always swing towards the Democrats,
Of
almost all of
course,
them.
of
Let's
course.
let's not let's not forget the Youngkin race in Virginia. I mean, they had Youngkin down like 13 points with 2 months to go, and he won.
Yeah.
Pretty, and it was close, but it wasn't that close. And so, I don't know. As far as Herschel Walker goes, I like the things that he stands for. I don't. Lynn Swan, who is a football player as well, he played for the Steelers. He ran for governor here in Pennsylvania years ago as a Republican, and he basically ran just on name recognition. And when it came to like he had to start talking, it was like, I don't think Herschel Walker's that bad. I think Herschel Walker's got chops.
That's been my
Is he
experience, yeah.
got? Yeah, I don't think he's as polished as a career politician like Ralph Warnock. But again, I think that if he just sticks to sort of a firebrand message about how bad Joe Biden is and how bad it's been in places like Georgia, I think that we'll be surprised that you'll see a lot because again, it's weird where you look. Do you look at the polls? That's one thing. Do you go to Twitter? I mean, if you go to Twitter, it's a slam dunk. Walker's not even in the race.
Right.
Everyone's just like that's the
Right.
same with Dr. Oz. Doesn't have a chance. It's the race is already over. We'll see. And I welcome the hubris. I hope Democrats are reading those polls going, we got it in the bag. Maybe they'll get another 2016 rerun. So it's so far out.
Yeah.
I like both of their. I would say my gut is both of those are going to be really close. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way. And I won't talk about it much here. I don't know where we're streaming to, but you never know. You never know. What votes come in Atlanta. At 3 a.m. We just don't know. So you gotta
Right.
you gotta make sure that margin of victory is there. So
No,
we'll see.
agree.
But I don't think he's out of the race. I don't.
Okay, good. I don't either. And frankly, I think you're right. Frankly, I'm kind of happy to see this sort of message being out there that Republicans are now suddenly supposedly going to have this difficult time, reaching a majority. Even Mitch McConnell was out recently saying that regardless of who controls the Senate after 2022, it's going to be close. So whether the Democrats keep it or the Republicans take it, it's going to be a one or two vote majority in the Senate, according to Mitch McConnell. Now, I still am holding out hope that the Republicans can get 3 or 4 up. But I don't know if you've seen the generic congressional ballot. This is actually pretty concerning. So back in November of last year, the Republicans overtook the Democrats in the generic congressional ballot for the first time ever. Like, literally for the first time ever. And that's when November of 21, last year, November, that's when everybody was like, oh my goodness, the Republicans overtook the Democrats in the generic congressional ballot, which is just a poll that asks people, who would you vote for in Congress, Republican or Democrat. If you look at it now, it's tied again, and that's happened since July 20th about. So in the last 3 weeks, the Democrats have basically closed the gap here, and brought it back into a complete and total tie. And I have no idea if that's because of the Roe v. Wade or if it's basically unexplainable. It's chalk it down to stuff happening locally and everywhere for the people got this call. But I mean, you look at the generic congressional ballot, and I don't know. I don't. The reality is of course, I think even though we've been doing this for 6 months and we've been paying attention to the midterms for 6 months, most people I don't think are paying attention to the midterms until, frankly, maybe not even until next month, September. It's only going to be a couple of months there where people really pay attention. It's incredibly a short time period, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've seen more interest in politics on Twitch and on Twitter. My viewer count and sub count is gone up here in the last couple of months. I don't know if you've been seeing more interest just generally in politics.
Yeah, I definitely agree. To talk just about the generic, how or the generic direction of the country, right? Like you're right. Like it's almost a statistical tie right now is the direction it seems to be going. But again, like you got to look at things in a bigger slice of pie. First, I think that you always see these polling groups when it gets closer to the election, they always swing towards Democrats. Like it just is. And when you start to get into their sort of methodology, they're still making assumptions that like 54% is Democrat and then 37 Republican and then 16 independents and stuff like that. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. And I think that they have a reason because they understand this sort of copium. So they always want to go. I mean, even in the 2016, 2020 election, even when Democrats won, they have Democrats winning huge and then they barely win and things like that. But even if the polling was accurate, here's what to remember. Democrats need to be way ahead on that metric in order to keep control of the House and Senate because so many of these seats, even if there is a generic propensity to go Democrat, the way that our system's set up, there's going to be more Republican areas just in general. And all you have to do is look at a map and see all those red areas and just the little few blues. So yeah, in those little areas, the Democrats clean up, like in some places, like in Philadelphia, where in some districts Romney got 0 votes. So that's how big Democrats are winning there. It's the rest of the country then that skews. So if it's even, if the numbers are accurate right now with this polling, then Republicans win pretty convincingly in the House, and they'll win slightly in the Senate. If the Republicans are actually winning that sort of generic ballot, then it's going to be an even bigger win. So I'm not worried. I think the Democrats have done good with the messaging and from distracting. If Republicans are competent whatsoever, they could just be like, how's your bank account? How's it right? How's it like? And that's what this election's going to come down to. And you still see if they could attach it to Biden. Biden's popularity is sinking like a stone. I believe it's now record lows in the entire recorded history of many of these polls, like Gallup. That's how low Joe Biden is right now. So
Yeah, according to the RCP average, his approval's 39, disapprove 56. So he's underwater 17, almost 17 points, 16 and a half points. So yeah, 17 points underwater. I mean, that's disaster territory. Although yet again, you look at Biden's approval rating in the last couple of weeks has gone since July 20th. Something happened on July 20th because if you look at both the generic congressional ballot and Biden, July 20th, they both turned around and Joe Biden went from 36.8 approve up to 39.6 approve. Still horrible, but something happened in July 20th that sort of changed this stuff. But I think you're going to really start seeing a lot sort of start happening here in the next couple of months. And to kind of get to the main issue, which is the economy. You saw the jobs number come out, and there was like 500 and some thousand jobs created last month. The stock market has been on a tear lately. Call it a bear market rally. Call it what you want. The stock market's up. Gas prices are down. 500,000 plus jobs created, and it's just enough. It's just enough for Democrats to absolutely screw themselves over by going on the campaign trail and acting like things are doing just fine and that this is a strong economy. That's one thing that they cannot lie about. I do think that the economy is gonna control the outcome, and I love to see these sort of like little bits of news that you can kind of spin as being a good economy, because I think it just kills the Democrats to go out there and actually try to say that the economy is doing well and the gas prices are down, because that's going to hurt them so bad.
it amazes me. Like I've always said, if the Democrats would hire someone like me or you to do their messaging, they would do so much better. Right? Like they have this. It's so juvenile the way they look at things. Like it's okay. Like I hate the Democratic Party, so I hate to give them this advice. But no matter who's in charge of an administration, it's okay to admit nothing's going to be perfect. And it was one of the things with Trump. Like Trump, one of his weak points was everything was the best ever, the perfect. It was like he was hesitant to be like, yeah, we made mistakes. We could have done this better. That's okay to say, and it comes off as it doesn't just come off as like, by the way, real quick, notice, because I don't want to make the same mistake that I'm about to criticize. Notice that when the media reports on Joe Biden, it's always him having to deal with a crisis. With Trump, it was he caused the crisis. With Biden, it's like the articles would be like, Biden struggles as he deals with economy and COVID. With Trump, it was Trump causes recession and inflation. And so it comes off as, because it's true, they don't care. They don't care that people are struggling to pay their bills. That's why they come off as so jaded, because they're like, hey, plebe, you should be happy. This economy is actually really good. You should be happy that we're, shutting farms down. You should be, and I think that people are smarter than that. And so, maybe it's because people are seeing some relief, like there is some relief when it comes to gas prices and things like that. And, I've been predicting this. I've been trying to hedge back against it. A prediction I made, I haven't heard anyone else say. We look at inflation year over year, right? Let's instead look at it 2 years over 2 years. So how much did inflation go up from 2020 to 2022, right? If I was to tell you in that 2 year period, it will go up 20%, you would say, my goodness, that's terrible, right? And so if it was 2020 was 10%, 2021 was 10%, it would look really bad. But what if it was 18% in 2020 and only 2% in 2021? Well, then Democrats would say, look at how we beat inflation. We beat it. Look at how much. And that's what's going to happen. The higher these numbers go, if you have 11%, 9%, 11% inflation in 1 month, the next year, if that inflation only goes up at 3%, that's still a huge amount. But it looks like, look, we did something, just like with gas prices. And I think some people, unfortunately, it is true that there's a lot of just kind of, what have you done for me lately mentality. And a lot of people feel like, oh, a month ago, like I couldn't pay my mortgage, but this month I just barely eked by. So they must be doing something good. And so it's all about messaging. And when I say that, people listening that are critical of us might go, oh, so Rob's admitting that they need to craft a narrative. No, that's what the Democrats are doing. We don't have to fake a narrative. We have to show how fake the Democrat narrative is. People are still struggling. It is because of the massive money printing. It's because of the lockdowns. It's because of the shutting down energy that they've done. And they're making it worse with this bill that they just passed.
Yeah. Well, so do you really think that the American people buy into the global warming alarmism in the sense that who was it just recently? There was just recently. Oh, you know what? No, they had Al Gore on Meet the Press. So I do the Sunday shows on my stream where we'll watch clips of the Sunday talk shows, and I'll watch Meet the Press. And what's hilarious is if you actually watch like Meet the Press every Sunday over the course of the last year or two, you'd just be stunned to see them talking about Donald Trump every single week in and week out. And it's like, hold on. You guys realize like Donald Trump's not president anymore. Joe Biden's been president for 2 years. He's doing like lots of horrible stuff. There's a lot of really bad stuff going on. But you guys are going to spend your Sunday talk show talking about Donald Trump and January 6th and whether Donald Trump's this and Donald Trump that, and it's staggering to see how disconnected they are. But they had Al Gore on, and Al Gore said yet again, global warming is a civilizational existential crisis where we are all going to die. If we don't do Green New Deal stuff, if we don't do authoritarianism, centrally planned, global warming economy, we will all die. The human civilization will die off. We're all going to die. And to me, it's such an insane proposition. I don't think that the American people are going to be willing to have their lives ruined. I mean, people can no longer go on family road trips. I mean, people can't afford to take summer road trips like they used to. The great American family road trip is now dead because people cannot afford to go do it. I had callers on the radio who said, and Montana's a big state. Montana is actually a massive state. We're fourth or fifth biggest in the country, but call in and say, look, I used to go visit my parents, once every couple of weeks or once a month, whatever it was. He said it was like a couple $100 in gas, and now it's like $450 in gas to do it. It had doubled, because but gas prices had doubled. It had gone from like, just around $2 to like $450 or something crazy. So, but he was basically saying, I can no longer go visit my parents. Like he was no longer able to visit his family because of gas prices. And people are experiencing that, and I'm just like, when people, and frankly, this is maybe something that Republicans need to do a better job of explaining to people and proving, is that the reason that we are having these problems is because of Democrats' global warming policies. They want these things. They purposefully want gas prices higher. They think that human civilization will die in 10 years if we don't destroy the economy. They think we are going to die in 10 years. Like they want this to happen. This is, and I just don't think people are willing to. first of all, there's a huge chunk of the American people that don't buy into man-made global warming at all, and then there's an even bigger chunk that says, yeah, maybe man-made global warming is real, but I'm not willing to like destroy my life over this. Or they think man-made global warming is real, but they don't think it's bad enough to where we can't adapt to it or make changes to it. So I don't know. That just seems, it's to me, that's like the biggest issue. And frankly, I used to be like a global warming streamer. I used to stream entire streams and talk about nothing but global warming. And that was because I was interested in it. It's a fun topic and stuff. It's becoming, and that was 5 or 6 years ago in 2015, 2016 and stuff. But it's becoming an even bigger issue now, and the Democrats, they just did a huge climate bill, and that's going to, all of the regulations, they want to control what kind of light bulbs you can have in your house. They literally want to control what light bulbs you're allowed to have. I mean, it's authoritarianism and central planning to a just extreme degree. And I just think if we can show the American people that the Democrats are doing this stuff on purpose to destroy our economy because of this insane alarmism on global warming, I just don't think the Democrats are going to do well politically. I hope I'm right on that.
Yeah, I mean, the fear is real. Like people, fear is a good motivator, right? It's maybe the best motivator. And so if you could convince a moderate person your grandkids will no longer be alive, the planet will be ruined, that's a powerful motivator, right? And what you need to do is one, prove that the arguments are being massively overblown. Secondly, that we're getting to a good place without all of this central control. Like if you look at emissions, they go down considerably every year. We were actually at one point meeting our obligations under the Paris Climate Accord, even though we weren't in it. And it didn't require, that was happening under Trump. That didn't require massive social planning. It didn't. Emissions have been steadily going down for years, right? And so all of the predictions you see, one, are they accurate anyways, who knows, but they always take into account that we continue to produce at the rates that we're currently producing. But one of the great things about capitalism, you don't think, like with all of these, you might hate corporations, I know you don't, but you might be a lefty and you hate corporations. They like money, right? And they don't want to all die, so they're going to be making investments and stuff that they think are prudent into the future. And so the free market will solve a lot of these problems. It's not going to be like the day after tomorrow where you wake up one day and all of a sudden there's storms everywhere and the planet's frozen over. It'll be slow, gradual changes if it was going to occur, and the market will be able to absorb most of that. But all that's to say, I think the most effective thing is we show every solution that they offer always means that the poor and working class have to sacrifice more. Every single one. The most effective attack on this Green New Deal that just passed the other day was they want you to pay more in gas. They want you to be audited more. Also, they could give their rich friends tax credits to buy electric cars that you'll never be able to afford. That's it. That's the messaging.
Totally.
That's the truth of it.
That's
and
fantastic.
when you factor in that the same people that make the most dire predictions are buying oceanfront property, they are flying on private jets everywhere.
Right.
Just like with COVID, they don't believe their own garbage. It is a scam. And the last thing I'll say about it is this. They needed to rush something through, and here's why. Because when their dire predictions don't come, right, now they'll say, that's because we passed that bill. That's what did it. And that because they know people are waking up to the Al Gore scheme. It's like, didn't you say we'd all be underwater by now? What happened? Right? And it's the same thing with COVID. They had to do the lockdowns and stuff because they know it's non-falsifiable. We can't look at what would have happened had we not do it. So it's always just fear, 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 fear. And then 10 years from now, when you say, what happened to all these dire predictions? You know, well, why aren't we underwater? Why aren't we frozen? Boiling, I guess they say warming now, until, it'll be a new ice age soon, whenever they decide to switch. And they'll be like, oh, it's because of what we did. But we need to do more. We always need to do more. And I think that the American people are starting to wake up. Not just the American, look at the Netherlands. I think they're starting to wake up.
All over the world. I mean, all over
Yep.
the world, people are waking up to this green authoritarianism and this green fascism. And hey, here's the great thing, Rob. Me and you, we are doing our own little part here on our own little corners of the internet to try to bring the truth to the American people, to try to encourage citizens to engage in constructive discourse about our politics, to have open discussions, to promote free speech, to promote constitutional government, to promote good policy, good government. And if everybody was doing what me and you were doing, and they were spending their free time at night, talking about politics online and trying to make movies or make videos and doing what we do, I think we'd obviously all be a lot better off. But say the same to both of our viewers. I mean, our viewers are spending their free time listening to people talk about politics, and I think, hopefully the more and more and more of that and that happens, and we can make a difference.
And listen, I say this all the time. There are a lot of Johnny come latelys. Who was on here saying this stuff before it was popular? Who was on, right? Like I don't know exactly what your work situation. I'll say this: my work situation is such that I could see myself getting fired for my political views. Right? I've been doxxed. I've been harassed.
Yeah.
I've had
Oh,
my I'm all sort,
yeah.
right? Like, and it's easy when it's popular, right? Like when I was criticizing Trump for endorsing lockdowns in March of 2020, I was getting all kinds of hate from both sides. And so I just think I always tell people, like, not only do I like doing the show with you, you were the first conservative I'm aware of that did politics pretty much
Totally.
exclusively on Twitch. And
No, and
there's
like me, I'm taking a huge risk in my life by being openly speaking about this and being on conservative talk radio. And I think that's why a lot of people respect me and you and are willing to support us in what we're doing financially, is because they realize that we are taking a significant personal risk for us and for our families and for our careers, because you're right, we could get the mob after us. We could get canceled. We could be smeared. We could have fake stuff come out about us. And the bigger we get, the more likely all that kind of stuff is to happen. So we are both. I mean, and that's why a lot of people won't do it. And that's because they know the left is so vicious and so intolerant that if you say one thing that disagrees with the left, you can have your life ruined. So why would anybody go out and do that?
Yeah, I mean, again, and if you doubt us, go to Twitter right now and watch how they're cheering that the FBI is being weaponized to go after their opponents. So, but no, I think that we are on the right. Look, the other thing is this, and I know you agree with this. Like your relationship with God, or even if you're not really religious, your relationship with your loved ones and your family, that's the most important thing. And at the end of the day, I sleep well knowing I might not be right about everything, but I try to be as honest and authentic as I can. I'm concerned about where I see the country heading in many ways, and I'm just trying to be vocal about it. I have fun too. Don't get me wrong. I love doing this. I have fun. But I think that you're starting to see more people wake up to understand, like, yeah, it's this house of cards is falling. And if we don't start doing something soon, it might be too late for a lot of people.
Awesome. Well, that's an hour. Part 7 in the books. We got 3 more parts. We'll do one here at the end of August, end of September, end of October. And
Are we
that'll
going to
be
do
it.
an election night? Like an election night special?
Yeah, we could
Stay
do,
up
yeah.
until 1 a.m. or something?
Yeah, we could do like the conclusion, like the epilogue or whatever. I
We'll
like
have
that
to
idea.
we'll have to take a drink every time a pipe bursts, and they have to stop counting in the middle of
Yeah.
the night, right? Like,
Or we maybe after the election we could do like we could do a review of like the first one we did or something like that, just to
yeah, it would be
see.
fun.
That'd be
Yeah,
interesting to kind of see.
yeah.
But anyway, thanks so much. Any other closing comments or?
No, that's it. Thanks again for having me on. Everyone, my stream's buffering out, but for everyone that's watching this live or in retrospect, check out Lecture Fan's channel and his radio show, which I was happy to be a guest on.
Oh, that was awesome. That was great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I hope I get to do it again. I thought that was great. So,
Cool. Thank you so much, Rob.
all right, take it easy.
Later.